if more entrepreneurs could get addicted to progress rather than destination, they would be killing it.
Gaming has never been seen as an art form, but I see it as an art form. It's a form of expression.
Structure is the greatest enemy to growth because you're so confined into what you think you don't even realize that, are you kidding me? There's a better way to do this?
I went for it and I never looked back. This is honestly the first time in my life this has ever happened where I truly told myself, like, I would die for this.
Okay, welcome back to the Daily Mastermind. George Wright III here with your daily dose of inspiration, motivation, and education. And I've got an awesome guest here today with us on the podcast, Titus Walker. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Thank you so much.
Hey, man, this is good. Listen, I know we had a chance to talk a little bit beforehand, but I think we're going to get into some cool stuff. But before we do, I want to give them a little bit of your background. Titus is the CEO and founder of the Ultimate Endgamer League, UEL. And his goal is for that to be the NFL of eSports. But you got a pretty diverse background. You've gone from real estate to gaming to starting your own company, growing a community, creating a brand. We're going to get into all of that. But I really love what you've done in a very short period of time. So you've got some great nuggets I'm sure you can share with our audience. So once again, just super glad to have you here, man.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much, man. Appreciate the intro too.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. And I know we're going to be able to do some other things too in the future. So let's do this. I always like to give our audience a little bit of a framework for the success that you and I touched on. So help us to understand where you came from, right? You mentioned that you've been in real estate and then you went into this. Let's just start real quick with Titus's background. Did you grow up like a side hustle type of guy? Where did you come from? And then how did you get into, tell them a little bit about how you got into real estate and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Always been a side hustle guy. I was introduced to gaming when I was probably like 5 or 6 years old, and it was Mortal Kombat. My dad introduced me to Mortal Kombat 1 on Sega Genesis and loved it. Just fell in love with the gaming part of it. I played a lot of games as a kid. Fast forward to elementary school, I was selling candy bars. I found out you could buy in bulk candy bars, and I'm like doing the math in my head, and I'm talking to my mom like, hey, like, you can sell these for a lot more and make a lot of money. And so she would take me to the store and buy a bunch of candy bars and sell them.
That's funny you say that because I was just at dinner last night talking to buddies about how I used to buy those boxes of candy bars at school. I'd have them in my duffel bag. And I'd just always be the guy who's like, yeah, you need something to eat. Here you go, man. I'm just constantly all the time. That's funny. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, graduated from that, started selling sneakers, did that very successfully, and then got into the insurance world and was doing both of those, selling sneakers and doing the insurance thing. And then I got sick. I don't even know what the sickness was, but I got really sick. And while I was sick, I was thinking a lot because I was in the hospital, realized I wanted to try something different. And so I happened to have an email that said that a company was hiring and it was like a real estate developer. I never heard of it, never heard of that, but I figured I'd put myself out there, went to an interview, got hired. That was what transitioned me into the real estate world. And I did really well, hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue over my 8-year or so career. Kind of did a lot throughout that, did my own real estate deals and created the gaming thing about 4 years ago.
Let me back you up just a question. What do you think was one of the keys to your success in a brand new industry? You were in it 8 years. You said you did all this success. Was it all like the chart all up and to the right, just all easy going? Like, what did you study a lot? What helped you become successful in an industry you had no clue about?
I think in everything I've ever done, I spend a lot of time understanding the industry and the people around the industry so that it's wild because nowadays you really can find out anything you ever want to know, whether it's true or not. You can find out anything you ever want to know online. And I started doing that when Ask Jeeves was the thing, before it was Google. Once that idea or that concept of, I can find this somewhere came out, that was everything. And so I would Google everything. And knowledge is like something that I really crave. So I read a lot. I read a lot of books. Never read a book until I was like 28, but since then I read 6, 7 books a month easily. And so anyways, yeah, that was the key thing is it's just when I get into an industry, I really want to know it inside and out. So it wasn't just that I studied the real estate market. I studied the financial market. I studied the economy. I studied the industries outside of housing, lumber industries, and
you're an active learner for sure. It's funny because we say this a lot on this podcast, but you hear it in personal and financial development is you've got to be curious and you've got to be an active learner. And I think people sometimes feel like they're too busy and they don't realize the value of that because obviously success leaves clues. And if individuals like yourself are learning and evolving because they're so eager to do, that's a big reason for your success. But I think it also, from what you told me earlier, it's probably another reason that you went into gaming because at the end of the day, your curiosity and your exposure to people and things like that is what put you out there to be aware of things. So tell us a little bit about what took you that transition into gaming, because I know people hear all the time is I want to make money gaming. And you think, oh my gosh, dude, that's not lit. But nowadays we're talking legit, right? So what was the transition point? And were you thinking to yourself, oh, man, is this even a possibility? Or were you like, I got this? What was the transition?
Yeah. So the transition, when in studying the market, I saw how cyclical it was, how it was like so many ups and downs. And it got to a point where I kept telling my wife, like, I have to have something else because what I won't do is go backwards. What I won't do is depend on this one industry that I know eventually is going to take a turn for the worse. And when it does, I don't want to be left holding the bag, as they say in the stock market. So I started a trading company, then started like I had all kinds of different businesses that I was pouring money into and trying to get to work. But none of them really drove me. None of them really, it was like I would try something because I knew I needed to try something. But eventually there was something that just clicked. And it really was when I started the gaming, when I started the gaming arcade idea and research, and I started really diving into it, something clicked. There was something so different about it that like, it was clear not only that there were serious needs in the industry, but that the industry was like, it was broken. Something was clearly broken.
And you didn't know exactly what it was, but I got to back you up for a second because I think people need to really understand the point you just made. And that is, people a lot of times, number one, are so busy living their life that they're not looking and they're not trying to prepare themselves. So that's the kind of the first point I really like that you made. And then the second is they sit around and they say, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know. And what you're saying you did is you just started trying things. You're doing trading, you're investing, whatever, you were trying things. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, at least ones I've met, do the same thing. Like they dabble into things, they try things, and then they find it. Because the question I have for you is, you didn't just wake up one day and go, gaming would be a good thing to do. I'm leaving real estate and going to gaming. You're doing things. And do you feel like you would have even come across it if you weren't just out there looking?
No, absolutely not. At the end of the day, I was very successful. I bought a 9-bedroom house and driving a Porsche, and there was absolutely no reason for me to have anything outside of that. And people would tell me that all the time. What are you doing? Can't you just be happy with what you have? And it was hard to explain because there was just that drive that like, this isn't it. I don't know why, but it's not it.
I'm going to ask you, it doesn't sound like you weren't happy with real estate because you seem like the kind of guy that's probably happy doing whatever you want to do, but you felt a need to continue to diversify. Is that a safe bet to say? Okay.
Yeah. It was more that I want to continue to grow. I'm addicted to progress, like addicted to it. If I don't see progress, I really struggle in life if I'm not progressing in some way. And I even it's to the point where I have this, not a lot of people know this, but I have a game that I play daily because it's a progress game. It literally it gives me, it's 10 minutes a day, first thing in the morning, but it gives me that little bit of progress to know, okay, I've accomplished something. And then I move on with my day and I accomplish stuff outside of it. But it just gives me that I don't know, that feeling like feeding
that
the
dopamine hit or whatever that need to fulfill. Exactly. Because man, I hear you there. And I love that point you made because people, a lot of times we breeze over stuff like that, but being happy where you're at. I'm telling you, if more entrepreneurs could get addicted to progress rather than destination, they would be killing it. And you literally have a game you do every day as a ritual to give you that little hit of progress. That's cool. I'm going to have to get more details on that too. But that's something you do every day. So you feel progress, but you've recognized progress. So you're out doing all this stuff and you came across gaming. And I guess the question I have is, did you notice it fit within your passion, or did you notice the opportunity in it first? What was it that attracted you to it, or both?
It must have been it was the opportunity first. At first, it was the thought that, oh, I can create this and it's something that I love. And maybe because I had done so many other things and all of them were like, oh, this is something I like. Maybe this is it. But with this in particular, at first it was that, but very quickly I had the University of Mary Washington put together like a research piece. And I remember they're reading it to me and explaining like the niche or the industry and how this is the average, this is the market. And it was like, at that time, it was like $150 billion and all that stuff like that. And the average gamer plays 24 games a year. And I'm thinking I'd been doing research already. And then they hit me with that. And I was like, hold on, how many? 24 games a year? And I was like, every other gaming competition is one game. How on earth, like, why would you do it that way? If they play 24 games a year and there's 2.5 billion gamers out there that are playing on average 24 games a year, why would I pigeonhole myself into one game? That doesn't make a lot of sense. So I started.
Yeah. And I want to make sure, because you talk this language, and this is important. Listen, if you're listening to this podcast, I want you to hear this. It's very important to understand the mindset of what he's talking about. There's $1 billion in the eSports type industry, 250 billion in gaming. But how many total gamers did you just say? There's how many?
2.5 billion.
2.5 billion gamers. And most of them, when you say play one game, you mean there's just one core game that they stay gaming on. Right.
All of the businesses that are trying to create a community, they play one core game. All the gamers play 24. So it's like, even the industry isn't feeding the gamers. It's a backwards concept. It'd be like creating a basketball league that only dribbles. There's no shooting involved. You know what I mean? What are you doing? There's other parts of this that are not being included.
And yet all of these gamers, and this is like anything in life, most people, they're all just in it and they don't think about those kind of things. No. You, however, are going through the lens of opportunity, problems and solutions. And you see that you're like, wait, why would you just play one game? Why not 24? Go out there. Okay, keep going, because the opportunity got really deep and you really took action on the opportunity. So what did you do?
And I like that you said that, because it's a thing I always say is Henry Ford's quote: if I would have asked the consumer what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. And that's really all there is to it. They don't know what they want. They don't know, like, they're doing what's put in front of them, not realizing there could be something better for them. And so anyway, so I looked into that research, and then I started thinking like, okay, let me look up every other esports platform. And I dove deep. I went so far into it and was just like, really like breaking down, okay, what are these platforms doing? How are they generating revenue? How are they? And it was like so blatantly obvious. Oh, they're not making money. They're not really as successful as even they try to portray themselves to be. They're not like, they have these massive communities that they don't really own, and they know it. And the question is, there's a video game, NBA or Madden 2K22, Madden 2K22, 2022. How long is that game going to be good for? How long is that community good for?
Because you're seeing the communities were forming around a game. Got it. And short-lived.
Okay, so I build this whole community, and then a new game comes out, because the developers don't care about my community. They're not building it for my community. They're building.
And there's only one person making money. The game, right?
Yeah. Yes. And so I just kept like driving into that research and realized like, okay, there's no community or gaming industry or gaming league or anything like that focuses on anything outside of one game. Not one, not a single one. And I'm like, how can I be the only person that's thinking like this? So then I started researching more of the developer side to see, okay, what are the rules and regulations around the game itself? And I realized, oh, okay, so if I don't advertise or have a focus in my community on any particular title, then I don't have to worry about the licensing because we're not,
Oh,
we don't have to focus on paying you to license your game. I don't have to worry about even if I'm bringing in revenue, if it's not because of your game and it's because of my league instead, now I don't have to worry about that. So I was like, okay, so I need to think of something like that. Then I researched every pro league in history, the UFC, the NFL, the NBA, the MLB. How did they begin? And what really set them off? What really caused the explosion? And like, how did they really build what they built? Because
yeah.
if you think
Yeah.
basketball now, you think NBA, right?
Yeah.
Period.
It's there. NFL, NBA, MLB.
Yes.
Yep.
It is, you think that, right? And,
Even
but
UFC, you think about it.
yes,
Nobody knew what it was. And now it's, everybody knows.
but it wasn't always that way. And
Right.
I grew up watching the UFC and I never watched a UFC match in my life, but I was so into the business of UFC because I always would watch the tap out guys. I don't know if you ever,
Oh, yeah.
and they're going to every game and that's how they built their whole like brand is just by going to all the matches and having tap out on it. And so I went.
This is what led you to build the UEL, right? Like basically I figured out how to build my league and I didn't have to worry about licensing. I didn't have to worry about that. But are you saying you patterned what you did off the successful track record of what these other major leagues have done?
Yes.
You didn't go out and say, how do I create the UEL? You went out and said, how did the NBA, how do
I create a new sport? How do I build a new industry? Because the NBA is its own industry. They own the basketball. If they change a rule, what happens to basketball?
Yeah, changes.
Everyone changes it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If NFL changes a rule, what happens in football? Everything changes. And that is an industry that is controlled. How often do you get to control an industry? Not often. But I can tell you, eSports is not controlled by anybody. And why? Because it's never changed past the one game. And you don't own the game, so you don't own the industry. And no single game owns all of the other games. And developers can create new games whenever they want. And so there's no way to really control it without controlling the people around it.
But there's a shift you did, which is you saw an opportunity, which, like you said, if you ask most people, they would tell you what they want.
Yeah.
But you saw an opportunity. But I feel like from what we've talked about, you shifted your paradigm, not to say, how could I do more? How do I create an industry? How do I create it? That's a paradigm shift that you've done consistently. And I tell you, man, it was just all easy going, no brain damage. You just started this thing. People started knocking down your door and it was all easy going.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So when I first came up with the concept, it was very much a shift of, I'll take UFC as an example. The way I had to shift people's brains was before UFC, you had boxing, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, all these different, we'll call them genres of fighting. There were all these different genres of fighting that were successful on their own. They were doing okay. They didn't need the UFC per se, but somebody came in and said, I'm going to redesign fighting because fighting as a whole was never actually, so nobody ever thought of it, which is weird to say, but they didn't think, weird. Let's do a fighting tournament. So I was like, okay, why don't we do the same thing? Let's do a gaming tournament. It's not about a game, it's gaming. And so we took the genres of gaming, and there's 5 major genres: fighting games, sports games, shooting games, racing games, and strategy games. Those are the 5 major genres in gaming. And so I combine them and I say the games are irrelevant. These are the genres of games that we play. And so when someone asks, oh, what game do you play? Oh, we play 33 different games around these genres. And that's it. We don't ever have to talk about the game because the game's irrelevant.
Yeah.
But once that shift, first I had to convince people.
Yeah. How did you
made sense.
to make that shift? Because usually in marketing, I'm a marketer. The last thing you want to do is try to get people to change what they're thinking to want your product. That's the hardest thing in the world. Yeah. So to make that shift is the genius. So what did you have to do?
I'll say, the reality of it is I spent 3 years with everyone telling me that I was wrong. 3 years where every single person I came across would say,
it's never going to take.
It's not going to work. It's never going to happen. You just need to do it the way everybody else is. Why don't you just do it this way? Because I was building a community, but the entire community was telling me, you're doing it wrong. You know what I mean? So it's like
Wow.
just that constant. And so this last year, I haven't had a single person tell me I'm doing it wrong. Not one,
Yeah.
not a
But
single
they never
person.
do. They never do once you great success, man. Come on. Oh, now you're all best friends. You all thought it was going to work all along. What did you do though? Are you saying it was persistence or did you come up with something?
So what I did was I really focused on first building a community of people that just enjoyed gaming. And gaming has never been seen as an art form, but I see it as an art form. It's a form of expression. When you sit down and you play a game, you're expressing yourself. You play the game a certain way based on how you express yourself. And the esports environment as it is does not allow any form of expression. Every single rule down to the very minute details is in a rule book that you have to live by. So you have to play the game this way or it
Got it.
doesn't count, or you have to do it. And so I opened it up and said, no, we're just playing the game. Express yourself in this game how you feel fit. How you want to play the game is the right way. And eventually, of course, we'll get the people that are playing and winning doing it a certain way. And so most people will follow that. But then eventually somebody comes around and defeats them and does it a different way. So I had to convince them first that gaming is an art. It's an art form. It's a form of expression. And there's nothing wrong with expressing yourself differently. That was
But
tough.
you really it's tough, but what you did was you really tapped into ultimately what they're going to love the most because structure and rules and discipline is good. I'm not saying, guys, listen, discipline's good, but structure is the greatest enemy to growth because you're so confined into what you think you don't even realize that. Are you kidding me? There's a better way to do this. So you're saying you were just persistently letting them express themselves over time.
And I think that focus allowed them to feel like they were somewhere special, even if they didn't understand it or believe in it fully. And I can say until, like I said, about a year ago, they didn't believe in it. But now I do believe that everybody involved believes in it.
You know what, though? I would say, but during that time, they loved it. It's not that they didn't love it. It's kind of why I ask you in hindsight now, hey man, let's charge $10 for cups of coffee and we'll make a place people can come hang out. You'd be like, bro, you're up in the night. It's Starbucks. Hello. Or let the Dollar Shave Club. Hey, let's go start a company that we can charge $1 for a razor. And you're like, dude, you'll never make any money. Sold for billions of dollars. So persistency is good, but I think you tapped into human nature and it sounded like you were playing the end game. You weren't like, all right, we got to get into this thing, selling merch, moving some products, getting things. So you were pretty patient if you waited 3 years, right?
It was never about the money. It was like, initially we charged people to go pro, but then once they went pro, and then we only had 14 pros season 1. We're on season 7 now, where the competition is for $100,000. We do $300,000 a year. But the idea was it was never for the money. So once someone made it into the pros, they never paid another dollar. Since then, they've never paid another dollar. And that was because in my head, it wasn't about the money. It really truly was about changing a narrative around gaming, but also giving people an opportunity to do what they love and actually get the money that is deserved to them. Because even now, if I am a streamer and I have a community of 100,000 people that watch me, that game does not pay me to play their game. They don't do it.
It's funny that you said all these people that's not the way to do it. And yet, so the way you're doing it where you make no money is the way to do it. Like people just don't think what they're saying coming out of their mouth. And bro, you did a phenomenal job because we'll say you went into this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you went into this, you were looking at opportunity, but you weren't greedy and short-term focused. You were looking for a way to do it. You tapped into community and the most important thing I wanted to get here, and I want you to validate this or tell me if I'm up in the night. You didn't know what this was going to end up looking like 3-4 years down the road. Like you just started, you had some ideas, right? But if you had waited to figure out how you were going to be able to convince people to do something, you had the whole plan all put together, you probably wouldn't be where you're at.
Yeah,
you just had to go down the road.
Yeah, and that's 100% right. I went for it and I never looked back. Like I had so many this is honestly the first time in my life this has ever happened where I truly told myself, like, I would die for this. I would really, truly die for this. This is something that I will do until I'll ride it till the wheels fall off. I will go down with this ship. And that form of commitment, I've never really, outside of my marriage and my kids, I've never had that in any type of any business or any things outside of, like I said, the people in my life, of course, but things I've never really had that. And I think like what I've built has turned into a person in my life. Like they say, it's your baby, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's your
It
baby.
really,
You moved forward. You're addicted to progress, right? We got that. But I feel like you discovered a couple things that are pretty common to entrepreneurs and successful people that I've met, which is you ultimately aligned with your unique talent, meaning things that you were doing great, but you love doing. So that is something that aligned for you. And you also were just willing to say yes and then figure it out. And so using those character traits, I got to ask you this question. Do you see this industry and what you're doing, and maybe this is why you're so passionate about it, do you see it being much bigger than it ever is going to be? Like you say, the NFL of esports, right? How big a
it,
vision do you have for this?
it'll be bigger than the NFL, NBA, MLB combined.
That
Combined.
big vision, man.
Yes. I mean, there's what, 400 million people that play football, right? 200 and something million that play basketball or something like that. 2.5 billion gamers, and it grows every day. New
Wow.
generation, they all play games, right? And it's going to be bigger than all of those. You can play football virtually and you can play basketball, but how many NFL players, when I can give them a contract big enough, how many of them will leave to play in my league instead because they just enjoy
Yeah.
video games? I have
Right.
NFL players that play in my league now. So,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
how
that's
many of them,
awesome.
when I can cut them a check big enough, will leave because they're like, I don't
See,
want to
that's
do this to
real,
my
man.
body. Yeah,
That is
like
real. That is real stuff. I got to ask you this because I'm sure people are listening to this. They're going, man, I've got to find a niche like that. There's got to be something. But I think something that helps a majority of people because they're stuck is how do you make it through 3 years of people telling you, no, it's not going to happen, not going to happen. And you're just like, I'm sold on this. What did you do? What's something you do daily, weekly? What do you recommend to people that maybe feel like they've got something that they're passionate about, but they're just hearing no everywhere they go? What did you do?
I wish I
Are you
could
just
answer that
wired that
question,
way?
man.
Are you
Yeah,
wired that way? Or do you
no,
also,
no, I'm not.
okay,
Like, so I've started and ended so many businesses within a 3, 4, 5, 6 month period, like so many times. And this by far was the hardest one I've ever done. It was the hardest journey I've ever had. I started the business idea, the concept. We locked down a location for the first arena, and my business partners, the day before signing the lease, backed out. Two of them, 2 out of 6 of them. And
wow,
then after signing the lease, about a month later, another 2 out of 6. And they sued me for their original investment. And I had to pay that back. And then,
wow.
my job gave me the ultimatum of, if you do this, we're going to fire you. And then, so
Oh,
I've never had so much adversity in anything in my life. But I've also never felt as much peace in anything I've ever done, like
yeah,
ever.
yeah.
And I think I can attribute that. Like, I think God has given me a lot of strength. And I think that I've put my head down and just trusted that what I know to be true is true. And yeah,
It's funny because you have those same common characteristics that I think people got to realize. And I say it all the time, is success leaves clues, guys. If you're listening to this, you've got to you got to read between the lines of aligning with things that you're passionate about, getting started, even if you don't know how it's going to come together, active learning, lifetime learning, right? But I feel like there's a level of resolve that you've had in your life, meaning you made the decision and you're just committed to doing it. So many people, I used the term earlier, but they dabble. I really would love to try this. I'd love to try that. Things get bad. They shut it down. They go to the next thing. We're all like shiny object entrepreneurs, right? But this definitely seems to be a project, a topic, a focus that you're resolved and committed to do. Like this is what you're going to do. And you've made that decision, right?
yeah, I was losing $150,000 a year for 3 years.
Wow. That's a commitment, man. commitment. Was your wife like, what in the hell are you thinking, man? What?
Yeah.
You had to have a good support structure because there's no way you keep doing that and you come home at night and feel like you can make it.
Luckily, I made a lot of money, but it's still just money it just felt, for a long time, it felt like it was just going out the window. It was just like, and people didn't appreciate it either. So it made it that much harder.
But you got to have when you have a big enough vision, though, those things don't stop you. It's people that don't have a big enough vision. Let's be honest, like the NFL of eSports or bigger than combined NFL, NBA, and MLB. Like that's a pretty big vision. That'll take you through some obstacles. And so, I know we're short on time and I want to respect your time as well. One of the things I loved about when I first met you, when we talked a little bit, is I said, what can we do to help you? And you're just like, brother, I just want to promote the brand, get it out there. Everybody has an ask and you didn't. And that was awesome. So even with that said, man, we want to do everything we can. How can people follow you? Where can they find you? Help us understand where's the best way they can support and get connected. Because I guarantee we got a lot of gamers listening as well.
Yeah, for sure. So you can follow us on all social media and our website is the same as well at UEL Esports or UELesports.com. So UEL, just like the shirt, UEL esports.com, and then at UEL on all social media. We're on every single one. Instagram is probably our most updated, or Discord if you are looking to become a player, which at this point is not super easy to become a player, but if you got the skills, then you can definitely do it.
Hey, if you got the dream and you want to develop the skills to do it, but you said that there's jumping through hoops, but man, there's nothing like $300,000 a year put out there to motivate you. That's good. That's good too. Listen, man, I appreciate you sharing some of your success nuggets. I know that people are going to be listening to this thinking, I don't know, man. And then years from now, you can go back and say, remember when I said the NFL of esports? And I got it on recording. Now let's do this. I know people are going to learn a lot from just your message and your commitment, your consistency and things like that. So I do appreciate it and hopefully have a lot more things. So thank you so much for joining us today for sure.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. This has been great. Really, seriously. It's been great.
Man. No, definitely. Listen, everybody, as always, and subscribe to the podcast. If you do me a favor and share the episode, it'll mean the world to me. It'll get more out there, getting the inspiration, motivation they need to create your best life. Do me a favor, do that. I look forward to talking with you more tomorrow. Once again, my name is George Wright III. Been here with Titus Walker on the Daily Mastermind. Have an amazing day. Talk with you soon.